Hi, I'm Rihanna, and this watercolor tutorial is for anyone who feels like they're not artistic. We're going to be using two colors today. I have New Gamboge and French Ultramarine by Daniel Smith, but you can use any warm yellow or warm blue that you like. It doesn't matter which brand. We're also using a round watercolor brush. I'm going to be using a size 3 today. And for watercolor paper, I suggest you use a 100% cotton paper. That will make a huge difference in the outcome of your painting. This is a watercolor block by Paul Rubens. It's 100% cotton and it's glued around the edges so that the paper lays flat while we're painting. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is grab some of the New Gamboge and I'm going to make a line at the top of the page in a semicircle. I will wet my brush and then we're going to use the wet brush to drag the pigment with water down into a circular type shape. It doesn't have to be perfect. If it looks a little wonky, that's fine. It's watercolor. Watercolor wants to do what it wants to do, and sometimes you just can't control the shapes that it makes, and that's okay. So the reason why we start with the pigment on the paper that's wet on dry, and then we use the water to kind of drag it, that is just to get a variation in the pigment colors. Next, we're going to make another smaller line, and we're going to do the same thing, only we're not going to make a full circular shape. We're going to make it into an ellipse, half circle, pointing up, and then we're going to go down a little bit further and make another line, and that will face to the right. That way our flowers have a little bit of variation. They're not all facing the same way, and it'll give you a chance to try different techniques and different shapes with these flowers. It's all going to be fairly similar. Now clean your brush off, and we're going to let the orange dry a little bit. Once it's been dry, we're going to mix up some water with the French Ultramarine, and I want it to be fairly watery, more water than pigment, because we want the color to be very light. So the more water, the lighter the color is going to be. The less water, the darker the color is going to be. So I found a shade I like, and I start by just putting the tip of my brush down and pushing down and then filling it in. If I had a bigger brush, I probably could have done that in one stroke, but because I'm using a size 3, I have to do a little bit extra. That's okay. We're gonna go around with the same pigment, and we're going to put another brush stroke right next to it, just whatever feels right. And I'm filling that in. It doesn't have to be perfect. Petals in nature are gonna look a little crazy sometimes. Watercolor is gonna wanna run or go off. That's fine. If you make a mistake, just call it texture. That's what all artists do. That's just texture. So put your texture in, right? I'll just go around putting petals in all throughout the painting. I don't really have a plan on how the number of petals I'm going for. I'm just putting them in until it fits. Visually, I just want it to look like every petal belongs. Some of them might be a little bit fatter than others. Some of them might be a little bit longer. That's okay. That's how nature works. And if you're getting it from different angles, the direction of the petal might look differently. Now, if you notice, I'm barely even touching the orange part with the petal. It's getting close to it, but it's barely touching it. It is dry already, so if I were to touch the orange, it wouldn't make a big difference. I'm just trying not to reactivate that color. This is more of an abstract, loose kind of watercolor painting. I'm not going for a realistic, extremely detailed. This is supposed to be relaxing and fun. And a lot of times when you do the same movements over and over again, you can just relax, fall in line with the watercolor. You're not having to think too deeply about anything, and that's where the peaceful feelings come in for me. So I started painting the second flower, and since it's pointing up, I decided I wanted the petals to point down, like it's just basking in the sunshine. Those are fairly light, so I'm going to get some more ultramarine blue, and I'm going to charge in the pigment into the already still wet petals, and the pigment will travel down from where I started, and I'm helping it with my brush. That way it's just, you can see them a little bit better because I felt like they were too light. So if you feel like any of your petals are too light, you can always charge in a little bit more pigment just so you can see it. But you don't want to go too dark because you want it to look like it's a shadow, not that the petals are blue. So when I started doing the third, I just basically did the same thing. I had it going straight up, and then I put the petals going towards the left because the daisy is facing towards the right. And I'm going to put a few smaller, short petals right there in front of it, just to kind of give it some depth, to make it look like that petal's further away. Now I am taking some more ultramarine and I'm going to glaze. So when you paint over dry paint, it's called a glaze, and because it's still transparent and still fairly light, but it will show up as little lines on the petals. It has 2 layers of the paint. So glazing is great for adding texture, as we said before, but I like to make it look like there's a little bit of, you know, crease, texture, shadow closer towards the middle. And you can do this if you want. If you don't want to make it look like that, you don't have to. You can skip this step, but it's fun and there's no real plan to it. I just make little lines, tiny little lines, and I don't go very far with them. It just gives it a little bit of character. If yours doesn't look like mine, congratulations, you're an artist, not a photocopier. The goal here isn't to mimic exactly what I'm doing perfectly to how I'm doing it. It's just to take my instruction and try to paint and to, you know, let yourself create something, whether it looks like you thought it would look in your head, or if it looks completely opposite of what you thought would come out. If you use too much pigment, that's okay. This doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be the first time you do it. You can keep practicing these same techniques until it comes out the way that you want. No one just comes out doing everything perfect the very first time. You have to be able to play with the paint to learn how it works. So next, you can see I'm mixing up greens. We're still only using 2 pigments. We're using the French Ultramarine and the new Gamboge, or whichever blue and yellow that you decide to use. Just mix them together. I don't have a formula. This is just me mixing until I think that looks like a good green. Sometimes it looks like spring. Sometimes it looks like a swamp. Both have their places. You just find the green that you want and you go for it. I'm still keeping this fairly light because the daisies are so delicate as it is. I want it to kind of look, you know, kind of springy. It is a muted green compared to what I would think spring would look like, but I think it looks well with this daisy. It doesn't overpower it. It has a harmony. So I just make lines for the stems, and then I have the one daisy connecting to the first daisy, because if you look at daisies out in the meadow, a lot of them are on one stem and they have many daisies stemming from it. So I'm just trying to mimic that. Then I make lines for the leaves, which are kind of like a frond type leaf. They are feathery, and so I'm just making these lines and just try to make it look a little pointy on the sides kind of like little feathery leaves. There's no real technique to it, just I use the tip of my brush and I just go for it like I'm sketching. And however it turns out is how it turns out. If you notice on the first daisy that I made leaves on, I staggered where the leaves were because a lot of the times that's how the leaves are staggered. They're not usually side by side from each other. And then I decided that there's some white space, so I'm going to make another stem. And on this stem, we are going to put some little flower buds, some daisies that have not yet bloomed. So I'll just make a little V, kind of looks like a little bird feet up on there. I'll make two, so we'll have two flower buds. And then before I put my green away, we're going to make a leaf just to balance this all out. And see, you make it feathery. Remember, if you mess it up, it's texture. Just put the texture on there. See, when you're making bad art, it doesn't matter how it turns out. It just matters that you get paint on the paper. Now I washed my brush. I'm gonna take a little bit of the French Ultramarine. I'm gonna mix it on my palette because I don't want to get it mixed in with the green that we mixed. So I'm just trying to get a very light mixture, and now I'm painting on the little bud, and I notice that it's a lot lighter than I want it to be, but that's okay. I'm just gonna go for it. We're gonna make a little water puddle there and on the second one, and that way it'll start off wet. And then I'm just gonna take some more of the French Ultramarine and I'm gonna charge it into the flower bud to add a little bit more color to it since it was so light when I put it on. So just trying to get the right consistency. If you ever have too much water on your brush, you just dab it on your paper towel and that'll help you control the water a little bit better. See, I'm just putting a little bit of pigment in there and I'll let it do its thing, drag it out a little bit. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. Just trying to make it look like it could be a little flower bud. Now I'm going to take some of the French Ultramarine blue and I'm going to write Daisy at the bottom, just using the tip of the brush. That's why I love the round brushes so much, because they're versatile. You can use them for painting, you can use them for calligraphy. I know this is far from calligraphy, I'm just writing and hoping that it turns out okay. Look at that, you just painted a daisy. See, your inner artist was hiding in there the whole time. Thank you for making bad art with me today. I hope it was peaceful and that you felt accomplished when you finished. And you know, it turns out it wasn't that bad after all, now was it? If you'd like to continue to make some more simple watercolor tutorials with me, I'll be posting these on what I like to call the Watercolor Wednesdays. No pressure, make art together. Sounds good? See you next time.